Today is the 5th day of this November 83 7-day retreat. Today we will talk about death, the fear of death, fear of dying, the idea of rebirth or reincarnation, in connection with a koan from the Hikigan Roku. It's number 29. It's called It Goes Along With It. Tasui's It Goes Along With It. Tasui is the man who said that. Before we get to the koan, I want to say a few words about walking through the zendo during break time in between meetings. It does come up with different people, maybe even those who don't bring it up. There's something there, wondering what she's doing. First of all, I can't sit up there for 2 hours straight. Somebody comes in and reminds me of a break time, and so I come down. Well, where else would I go? After all, we came together here to work together. I wouldn't jog through here. Even though this would maybe what the system would need most. I don't even walk continuously. The floor creaks, and walk as quietly as possible, because you're sitting as quietly as possible. There's real quietness down here in this room. And I stand near each one of you for a moment, either directly behind, a little bit farther away, sometimes to the side. It doesn't matter. And I'm not standing there to look at you. I usually have my eyes closed. I'm not trying to evaluate your posture, to take some kind of vibrations, or give vibrations for that matter. I'm not trying to read your thoughts. I'm not interested in what you're thinking. But the idea is present in some people's minds. Is she reading my thoughts? I can't read your thoughts. Why should I? What you tell me in meeting, that's sufficient. I don't come walking through here as a teacher. I don't even know what this really means. We're using this word. We don't have a better one, a different one. The feeling, if I would try to put it into words, is one of friendship, intimacy, without trying to intrude upon you. Respect, if you will, although I'm always so suspicious of this word respect, because implied in it is there could also be disrespect. And yet, for some people it is a difficult thing to have somebody behind one, particularly if there are memories of other times, maybe when one was evaluated or judged or corrected. and therefore the felt presence of someone behind one and a response to put forth something or other, one's best posture, or is so intimately linked up now in this brain and nervous system of ours, which responds so mechanically from memory. And yet, if it is observed and if you listen to what is being said and don't think I'm trying to put something over on you, if there's trust that this is really so what I'm saying, maybe one can relax into this whole thing without needing to respond to it in terms of what does she want, or I'll show her that. The koan reads, a monk asked Dasui, the conflagration at the end of the eon sweeps through and the universe is totally destroyed. I wonder, is this one destroyed or not? Sui said, it is destroyed. The monk said, if so, then this goes along with it? And Sui said, it goes along with it. In another translation, the same dialogue says, when the kalpa fire, kalpa means at the end of a certain long period of time, when the kalpa fire flares up and the great cosmos is destroyed, I wonder, will it perish or will it not perish? It is there in quotation marks. Here it is not. I wonder, will it perish or will it not perish? Zui said, it will perish. The monk said, then it will be gone with the other? It will be gone with the other. The Buddhist cosmology, as well as other ancient religious world systems, cosmologies, provide for or teach the coming and going of eons constantly in never-ending succession, and the ending of one in one system maybe by conflagration of fire, and in other systems it's the great flood washing everything away or burning everything away. And then a new eon, which also comes to an end in the same way after an infinite time has elapsed. This is available to be read in the scriptures, is taught, and the monk has heard about this. Just as we hear about the Holocaust, imminence of it, possibility of it. Now he doesn't ask, is this true, will this happen or not? This to him is a given. He's heard it all his life, and this is what is taught as being the way the world comes and goes, or the universe. What he's asking for is, is there something imperishable, permanent, indestructible, that will remain. And the question is not that clearly or detailed phrase, but when one puts oneself into this mind, because it is ultimately one's own mind, will something of me continue? He doesn't say me, he says it, because in Buddhism there is the teaching about the true nature or true self or Buddha nature, something we have which may survive, may be beyond birth and death. One has heard about if there is enlightenment, there is freedom from birth and death. And yet he's trying to bring this together with the teaching about the total conflagration at the end of the Kalpa, the whole universe being destroyed, which is a frightening and threatening thought. It's a thought. And then the thought, will it also be destroyed? Or will it survive? Will it go along with the rest? You have your choice what this it is. And if you look within, what is it for you that one wants to continue, to keep on going, not to be finished, done with, over with? Buddha nature in one, religion and soul in another, and Atman in another. Holy Spirit, spark of God. Something to cling to in one's thoughts. That will survive the destruction which also is in one's thoughts. And the answer is, it will go along with it. The whole thing will go. There's nothing separate that will survive. Actually, Tasu is not making a general statement. He's responding to the person in front of him. It is recorded that another time he said, it will not go along with it. How much we depend on somebody in whom we have invested some expertise or knowledge or wisdom, authority to tell us what will happen. And only too willingly we get an answer. Too readily. This is not a critical remark about what's going on here. So what is it that wants to continue, and why? Can one, rather than just cling to a fragment of a feeling and thought, look at the whole scene that's involved? Maybe such a thought arises most readily at the time of death of someone close to one. One's closest friend or relative has died. And with close I mean a person on whom one depended deeply for feelings of intimacy, closeness, friendship, sharing, support, maybe strength, a person who had great strength, wasn't easily shaken. And if this happens in youth, one had maybe imagined together what one would do, the travels one would take, the house one would build, the family one would have. I'm taking one case, that can be family, can be one's child, a little child. This freshness and newness of a little child. And it's dead. At this moment there's indescribable pain, shock even. People go into shock over something like this. It's too much to feel, so for a while the whole system just blanks out, but the feelings come back, the sadness, the sorrow, the lostness, the loneliness, and a direct confrontation with one's inner emptiness, which was filled by the presence of this person and the things one did together and the things one planned for together. All of that is swept away, and there is this empty crater inside, which may have very likely been there before, but was covered and filled, sort of planted, made arable during the time of the life of this person. And now everything is gone. And there one is, lonely again, and in pain and sorrow. Very often, not so much or not exclusively for the death of the other person, if one looks very closely, that may be in there too, but usually the lion's share is pity, sorrow for oneself. And everything within oneself wants to do something about this sorrow to get out of it. To smother it, to distract oneself from it, get away from it. Start planting something new in this crater. Which means the emptiness itself in its plainness is not faced completely. It is distrusted, feared, suspected for what it may do to one. One looks for comfort and consolation, and one finds it, if one is so inclined, in promises of an afterlife, an afterlife in heaven, in a place that has been painted for one as being lush, without pain, infinitely better than what's here. Eternal joy and bliss. Or the belief in reincarnation of this person who's been lost being born again, and maybe then we'll meet again even in this life. And of course, one never thinks and feels these things out separate from one's own life. One's own fear of death is deeply touched when someone else dies. You may say, it is not so for me. Well, then it is not so for you. Either really not so, or it is buried. One hasn't really, it's really not been tested out. But for oneself, this stirs one's deepest fears and longings, fears of coming to an end. This whole thing of coming to an end may seem so futile, so senseless, cruel, cruel, painful to think about. And also the wondering, is there something that continues of me? Which would make so much more sense. Then I wouldn't have to be quite so crushed. I could think of that continuing. And that thought is already trickling some better feelings into the system. But one must always think something through if one is thinking. Not to think in parts, but think it through. What is it that one wants to continue? We have this incredible ability to think in watertight compartments. One compartment is the misery of my present life, which I don't want to continue, which I want to get rid of, have changed. And in sitting in a retreat like this, one comes face to face with the painful scars and memories, imprints of one's whole past life, and the power with which they rule the present life, the present moment. One is often utterly amazed and shocked at the extent to which old imprints, old memories, old hurts rule the present moment. Instead of being able to be in touch with the newness and freshness of the present moment, it is reacted and responded to in terms of what this triggers of past remembrances, hurts, conditionings. And one feels trapped, really trapped, by this process which comes into light if one sits and questions, attends, without just dreaming of beautiful future happenings. So it's certainly not the continuation of old hurtful conditionings, memories, and scars that one wants to take into the next life, does one? But that is the me. The me is, as we've tried to come at from different sides throughout these talks. The me is the accumulation of all past experiences, some of them joyful, happy. I don't know what the ratio is, but in talking to people, having talked and having lived oneself for some 56 years, one wouldn't want to do it over. Not this. One wants to start something fresh. Yeah, the me is an accumulation of self-defenses, all the way since babyhood, starting little defenses against a cold. It's cold coming out of the mother's belly, is cold. And because today, as an attempt to use new, softer methods of bringing this little organism into the light of day or night, less glaring lamps, less hard instruments or hard feelings. I don't know about who is there doing it, these people really with it, or also consumed with worries about what goes on in their family at home, or where they would rather be than just delivering babies day in and day out. Children who are adopted, we adopted a child. That child was left for 6 days by himself. We don't know, we weren't allowed to go there. The mother wasn't allowed to see the baby at all. She had not wanted to have the baby. So it was considered the right thing not to have mother and baby get together. So there for 6 days there was this little organism in a little crib there. I don't know what time the nurses had to be with him. And how early do self-defenses develop? Defense against fear, coldness, lack of something that's needed and craved with the whole organism, touch. A presence which is not the content of the words that are spoken, but the presence. In the absence of this or missing of it, and all along self-defenses are built up. Defense of an image of oneself. The image itself being a defense to being nothing, and the danger of nothingness, meaning left to die. So one notices this, sitting in retreats, one comes across these defenses, and it's often, one shakes one's head, unbelieving how defensive one is. And how one obstructs the very thing that one yearns for, namely the intimacy of loving relationship with the people around one, who are also wrapped up in defenses. Is this what one wants to continue into the next life? One must really look at that. Of course the answer is no. This doesn't take any reflection at all. I don't want to take that along. That I want to leave. What I want to take along is what? Do you want to take along any memories? Because this would be the next thing that would suggest itself, all the memories of the beautiful times I've had. Whereby the memory is always a little bit rosier than the time itself. One can check that out oneself. I've often mentioned it, that a slideshow of a trip is much rosier than the trip was with all its flat tires. Motels with smoke and noise. One waits at the Grand Canyon till the hundreds of people are out of the way before one takes the picture. Which doesn't mean one doesn't find lonesome or solitary spots. And they're really being what one cannot describe in words. But if that is at the moment completely felt, seen, and experienced, if you want to use that word, without an experiencer, just that being there, the strange thing is it does not really record very heavily in memory. It is so sufficient unto itself and so sufficient that nothing is wanted of it. Or one wants the repetition of it, and then one starts recording it as something one wants to think back on, and one does. Is this what one wants to take into the next life? The memories of beautiful days or times, sex, music, good food eaten, good drink? Why does one want to take any memories anywhere? Or why does one do it? We do it. You can just look at what happens when one sits. It's the reason that one just does not know how to live deeply and profoundly and openly right now, and therefore constantly seeks the aid of memories to buoy oneself up or to fill the time with something interesting or enjoyable. Would one think of rebirth if no memory went along? Would one crave it if no memory of me, whatever these memories are, and one has to look at them really to become clear about this? If none of those memories went along, maybe my accomplishments in this life, how the esteem of people, the position I have worked for so hard, starting up from nothing, and now I've got something, I've got a little company which is doing well. Does one want to take that along? We laugh, but in ancient times when a king died, it couldn't be done for anybody else. His whole retinue, and it was not the dead retinue, it was the live retinue, including all his royal treasures, went into these monumental graves. There have been excavations of kings' graves in which some retinue of 80 of 100 people, including the wife, she had to go too, were buried. Dead and live things buried for the king to take along. Later on, in a little bit more humane vein, it was just painted on the walls. All the things he did, the hunting scenes and the harvesting and all the wives and children, they were painted. They were allowed to live on until they died a natural death. So, what is it that we want to take along? Self-consciousness? Ego? Me? I consciousness? When we find out in this work what a pain it is? What a barrier, an enclosure, a separation it is? If thought continues and says, no, I don't want to take my rings and my money along, I'll leave that. But there is this soul or this Buddha nature, self-nature, that shouldn't perish. That's imperishable, isn't it? But what is it? As long as it's not a thought. Do you want to take your thoughts with you? Thoughts do continue, that's a fact. That's an absolute fact. We don't have to want or crave that thoughts continue. They have continued since human beings have thought. We're still laboring under the thoughts of our elders and ancestors, which have been passed down to us. And we're passing them on to the next generation. The thoughts of our family, of our race, of our religion, of our civilization, of our times, or if we are very infatuated with past times, we pass those thoughts on. So thoughts do continue. They are pick-upable everywhere, at any time. This question, will it go along with it? What is this it? What is it? And one can get a real headache trying to figure out what that is that one really wants. Because it is not thought, and yet thought tries to grab it. How can it? How can thought captivate, or grasp anything that's not thought? And this is maybe where the whole dilemma lies. I want to continue as a thought. And what I want to continue always turns out to be thought, because I'm thinking about it. Do you see what goes on? What is dying? Not just at the time when the body comes to an end, either naturally or through accident or whatever. What is dying? You can think about it, but that's not dying, that's thinking. Can thought die? Meaning, be quiet, come to an end, be still? You don't know. What is not knowing? Thinking is knowing. But you can't know what dying is, because dying is not knowing. Not knowing does not mean no perceptions, but not knowing what is perceived. Or if a word suggests itself, to put it aside again and attend and listen without knowing. And then the question is, can one live that way? This moment, not at some future time, which is again operation of thinking, but this moment, not knowing. And therefore, deeply feeling, listening, touching, without a thought of keeping it or getting rid of it. Because that's thinking again. That's trying to make it into something known under the belt of the me. Is it possible to live so fully and deeply right now, whether it's at a time of painful sorrow over the loss of someone, or joy, not run away or cling, not escape into consolations and beliefs and distractions, but feel what's there, whether it's sorrow or a gaping inner emptiness, hardness. That feeling of isolation, if one does not spin thoughts about it, because thoughts is trying to know what it is, but this thing needs to be plumbed directly, intimately, without thought, with nothing in between. Then maybe there is this awakening to the wholeness of life. All of life, of which one is not a separate part unless one thinks one is. The wholeness of life, which is not to be separated into past, present, and future unless we think in those terms. It is one ongoing flow of vitality, creativeness. As the ancient systems have maybe had a feeling for the conflagration or the flood itself being part of this whole process of destruction and creation. In which there is no time, and therefore no beginning and no ending. Seeing oneself as an individual, stranded being, which one conceptualizes, caught in the scars of the past, in the conditionings of the past, unable to face the pain of loneliness and sorrow and emptiness in the present, and therefore projecting illusions for the future. There is the fear of death. Obviously there is. It can't be any different. But is this whole thing a thought production? Who am I? When that's just listening, not knowing, and not responding from memory. Or the responding from memory is glimpsed as it comes up, and therefore loses its power. It may bring about a mood, a deep mood, but that is here now to be felt in its fullness, in its depth, completely, and not thought about or moaned over or escaped from. Then this whole thing continues. If there's this escape. But when whatever comes up is faced completely in depth, not knowing, putting aside the known that comes up, the words that come up and intrude, then what is there? What is there to be taken along? And who is the taker? And along to where? Is there another place? Or another time? Then I'm back in thinking. In this work, which we call work for lack of a better word, it's not the best word in the world, because work for so many people is associated with drudgery, and maybe this work here is drudgery. In this questioning, attending, not knowing, can it all go along with it? Not knowing where to or where from. Listen. We will end here for today.